I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Missoula County acknowledges that this event takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Coos Bay people. We have closed captioning. Thank you, Cheryl.
Hello, everyone. If you're joining us for this meeting virtually today, instructions for turning on closed captioning are on your screen. If you're joining us in person, we'll have closed captioning on all the screens here in the Sophie Muiz room. Just a reminder, there will be multiple chances during the meeting for public comment virtually and in person. During those times, if you'd like to speak, we ask that you use the raise hand feature if you're Microsoft Teams. This is the small hand button at the top of the screen. If you're calling in on the phone, you'll need to hit *5 to raise your hand. Once called upon, you'll need to hit *6 to unmute. If you have any questions, please come find me during the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And we have a couple proclamations to read. So, Commissioner Strohmeyer, would you like to read one and I'll read the other?
Certainly. The first proclamation is related to Native American Heritage Month. Whereas Missoula County is located within the homelands of the Confederated Salish, Upper Kalispel, and Kootenai tribes, and whereas in October 1891, the United States government forcefully removed the Salish people from their Bitterroot homeland and further imposed European concepts of land ownership by authorizing the appropriation of land within the boundaries of sovereign nations through the purchase of non-native people, through the purchase by non-native people, and whereas we acknowledge the ongoing impacts of systemic racism and intergenerational trauma that have resulted from historical injustice directed toward indigenous populations, and whereas Missoula County continues to strengthen relationships with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, enhancing trust and understanding and developing policies and practices that will aid in closing equity gaps and honor indigenous roots and history in our communities. And whereas American Indian Heritage Month was first proposed in 1990 by U.S. House Joint Resolution 577 and later changed to Native American Heritage Month in 1991 by George H.W. Bush, and whereas this proclamation serves as a reminder of Missoula County's commitment to honor our relationship with sovereign nations and indigenous peoples and to uphold trust treaty responsibilities, now, therefore, be it resolved, we, the Missoula County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim November as Native American Heritage Month to value the history and rich cultures of indigenous peoples as we recognize their pride, resilience, and determination and patriotism for this country. Signed today, this 6th day of November, by your Missoula County Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to add anything to this or speak to this? Okay, our second proclamation. Whereas the residents of Missoula County have respect, admiration, and gratitude for all citizens who have served in the armed forces, and whereas the contributions and sacrifices veterans have made in service to their country and communities are significant and commendable. And whereas Montana is home to approximately 85,000 veterans, and 8,000 of whom live in Missoula County. And whereas Missoula County seeks to honor the veterans who have placed themselves in harm's way in service to their country and appreciates the sacrifices of our United States military personnel and wishes to grant them specific recognition. And whereas veterans continue to serve our community in the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, religious groups, civil service, and other community organizations. And whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and whereas there will be a 20% increase in the number of service members transitioning to civilian life in the near future, and whereas studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life, and whereas active military service members transitioning from the military service are at a high risk for suicide during their first year after military service. And whereas the National Association of Counties encourages all counties, parishes, and boroughs to recognize Operation Greenlight for veterans. And now, therefore, we, the Missoula Board of County Commissioners in the state of Montana, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2025 as a time to honor the service and sacrifice of our citizens in uniform transitioning from active service. Be it further resolved that in the observance of Operation Greenlight, Missoula County encourages its residents to honor all those who have made immeasurable sacrifices to preserve freedom by displaying a green light in a window of their home or business. Dated the 6th day of November, 2025, your Missoula County Board of Commissioners. Any comments or anyone to speak to Operation Greenlight? Okay, our current claims list as of October 16th, 2025 to October 27th, 2025 by the Commissioner's Office totals $1,592,486.64. We have 3 hearings today, so we'll begin. Oops. I'm rushing us. I'm so sorry. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? If anyone has public comment on items not on the agenda, come on up. Anyone online? Okay. Folks are muted online if someone's trying to speak. Okay, we will go to our 3 hearings. Our first one is with the Missoula County Consolidated Land Use Board. Karen Hughes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a request from our office, Missoula County Planning, Development, and Sustainability, to create a new board to review development proposals and land use activities. It would be a consolidated land use board that would serve the functions of a board of adjustment, a planning board, a zoning commission, and should Missoula County enter into it under the Montana Land Use Planning Act, they could also serve as a planning commission. Back in the 2021 legislative session, 2023 legislative session, the legislature enacted Senate Bill 130, which allowed for local jurisdictions to create consolidated land use boards and combine these boards together into one functioning board. And then also in that legislative session, they passed the Montana Land Use Planning Act, which created a new form of planning and zoning law that created a planning commission concept. The city of Missoula has proceeded they are required to follow the Montana Land Use Planning Act, and they are moving ahead with creating a municipal planning commission, and will no longer need the Missoula Consolidated Planning Board once they have adopted their new codes. This left the county with a need to figure out whether we wanted to have a county planning board and continue to have a county board of adjustment and create a county zoning commission, or if we wanted to pursue this consolidated board concept. We consulted the planning board, we consulted the board of adjustment, and talked with you about their feedback. The planning board was generally supportive. The board of adjustment was more mixed and had more concerns about a consolidated land use board. We also sent this out to our broad-ranging email list, which includes developers, representatives, and agencies, and members of the community and community councils. We presented it to the all-community council meeting and generally heard support for this concept. So we're bringing to you today a resolution that would create a new 7-member board. We would transition the Consolidated Planning Board and the Board of Adjustment, which are currently in place. We'd transition them out after the new year and transition this board in, and they would hear all of the items that would typically have been heard by those boards, both as an advisory board and as a governing body, in the case of the Board of Adjustment. We're proposing a 7-member board with 2 alternates. All must be residents of Missoula County. And we've provided a selection of the types of background and experience. We'd recommend folks represent various areas of the geography of Missoula County, as well as have expertise in the area of natural, historical, cultural resources, agriculture, housing, economic development, architecture and design, land use planning, real estate, land use law as examples. We've also suggested that, as has historically been the case, that we continue to have a member of the Conservation District be recommended to the commissioners to serve on that board as a voting member. And another idea that had come up in our annual meeting with the tribes was to have a tribal council appointment. We have proposed that the tribal council appointment either be as a voting member or as an ex officio member, depending on whether or not they meet the residency requirements and the preference of the tribes. That is an amendment that I have suggested and handed to you today as a small revision, would be to make that change. Ultimately, this board would again serve as the Board of Adjustment, the Zoning Commission, the Planning Board, and potentially, should the county follow the Montana Land Use Planning Act, the Planning Commission. So what we'd recommend today is that you adopt the resolution to create this board with the amendment that would clarify that the Conservation District would be recommending an appointment, and the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribal Council would recommend an appointment, and that the Tribal Council appointment could either serve as a voting member or ex officio member. So that would be the amendment to the resolution. And if you, following public comment, if you have questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? Okay. Yes.
Karen, so in the event that the tribes appoint someone who would not be a resident of Missoula County and would serve in an ex officio role, does that mean that we would then appoint an additional person to be a voting member, or how would that work?
You would always have 7 members, so 7 voting members plus the 2 alternates. So if they appoint someone who would serve as an ex officio, then the commission would appoint the voting member that might have been appointed by tribal council.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or public comment? Not seeing any in the room or online.
I would move that we adopt the resolution as amended.
Second. Again, any further discussion or public comment? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Kevin Dantic with Stephenson Family Transfer.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Kevin Dantic, planner with the Missoula County Department of Planning, Development, and Sustainability. Today, I will be presenting the Stevenson Family Transfer Request.
I'm sorry, I mangled that. Okay.
Stevenson? Yeah.
Okay.
This request has been brought forward by Jeffrey E. Stevenson. Stephen Coe from Water and Environmental Technologies is the technical representative. The property is addressed as 3233 South 7th Street West, lies approximately 0.95 miles west of Reserve Street and approximately 1 mile east of Clemens Road. It is included within the Orchard Homes community area. Here we see a close-up view of the property. Parcel is zoned under Citizen-Initiated Zoning District Number 9, which was created on December 27th, 1958. Zoning district allows for up to 2 homes per acre. The parcel is also included in the 2019 Missoula Land Use Element, an amendment of the 2016 Growth Policy. That has a recommended residential density of 3 to 11 units per acre. However, that aforementioned density is only applicable if the property has connections to public sewer and water. Staff has identified the property is currently served by a City of Missoula water, but the nearest public sewer connection is approximately 0.2 miles to the northeast. Hence, the proposed division will meet the criterion set forth by zoning regulations and growth policy. The parcel is accessed by South 7th Street West, which is a Missoula County maintained roadway. Before you, we have the existing conditions on the parcel. The parent tract was created by the filing of Dinsmore's Orchard Homes number 5 on September 5th, 1901. Book 1 micro, page 10, contains 4.555 acres. It's currently developed with one single family residence that was constructed in 1959 and an accessory garage per CAMA data. The claimant's proposal is to utilize the family transfer exemption to divide the subject property. The family transfer will result in the division of the parcel into 2 tracts. The gifted parcel to the claimant's wife, Wendy T. Grace, will contain 3.85 acres, and the parent parcel to be retained by the claimant will contain 0.87 acres. The proposed family transfer tract is intended to be developed by the recipient in the future with a single family residence. The remaining 0.87 acre tract will be retained by the claimant until which time that new home is built on the newly created parcel. At that time, aging parents will be moved into the existing residence that you see before you on the parent parcel. Again, here are the proposed conditions. Gifted tract of 3.85 acres will encompass most of the southern and eastern portions of the tract. And the existing home is depicted in the top left. As part of the review process, this proposal was sent out for agency comment. 3 agency comments were received on the proposal. Karen Baldridge from the Missoula County Clerk and Recorder's Office commented that it's never been divided since its creation, so no comment on that one. Kevin Heisler from Missoula County Public Works Building Division commented that all future development on the parcels will require all appropriate permits and consultation with all applicable county departments. The Missoula County Floodplain Administrator, Matt Heimel, commented that if the parcel went through full subdivision review, an engineered crossing for the irrigation ditch that fronts the property, and pre-approval by the irrigation district would likely become conditions of approval. In reviewing the request, staff considers Chapter 8.4 of the Missoula County subdivision or Missoula County zoning regulations, which lists general evasion criteria when evaluating claimed exemptions to determine if the request could be considered evasion to subdivision review. There were 3 criterion identified that possibly indicated evasion. The claimant did receive the property via quitclaim deed on September 24th, 2024. There was a development review team meeting for a proposed 5-lot minor subdivision named the Lazy Grace subdivision that came through on January 2nd, 2024. Nothing was identifiable to staff after that point. And the irrigation ditch that was mentioned would likely be considered during subdivision review, such as the engineer crossing and possible pre-approval by the irrigation district. However, staff has identified this is the most appropriate exemption to utilize for what the claimant aims to accomplish based on the information submitted in the application and affidavit. Jeffrey Stevenson, are you in the room or online? I am. Perfect. I'll have you come up to the mic here, and please make sure that the green light is on. Green light. Push the little button. There we are.
Great. Fantastic.
Hi, Jeffrey. I'll just be asking you a few questions.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Shall we proceed?
We shall.
Perfect. Did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
We purchased the property when we realized we were coming to Missoula for purposes of making sure we had space for our rescue animals. Building a home was later. We came to that notion later on.
Perfect, thank you. Do you or your transferee intend to transfer the property within the next year?
Nope.
And have you talked with anyone at Missoula County about going through subdivision review?
Yes.
Perfect. And commissioners, that was mentioned previously. Will the property be developed?
No.
And will the recipient of the property be residing on the property?
Yes.
Perfect. Commissioners, any questions?
Thank you, Jeffrey. So a couple of questions for you. First, since it sounds like parents will be living in the existing residence after you build a new home, is there any reason why you simply don't build the new home without dividing the property? Because my understanding is that the zoning would allow that.
There's financing issues that are impossible to overcome. And there's also a weird kind of thing that has to do with the medical, some sort of health insurance thing. I don't know what it is, but there's specifically, it's just that specific. It's the impossibility of financing. It's just too hard.
Okay. And could you talk to us just a little bit about the prior subdivision that you had explored doing
sure.
there?
Yeah, so after we had been situated for a while and we knew that we were going to be, Missoula is it. I'm never leaving Missoula. We sort of thought, okay, this will be a good opportunity. When we realized my in-laws were getting older and we started listening to the stories of our friends who were like, oh, we had an immediate need to deal with moving parents. We were like, okay, I don't want to deal with that. We can do something where we not only build our own space, but we can, if we're going to go through this whole process anyhow, let's just subdivide, right? We'll subdivide, we could have our friends come in, purchase. Everybody loves Missoula, it'd be great. And then as we went on along, we had our meeting with the reps. As we went along, it became clear that it is not financially feasible. It is not something that we could afford to do to manage the subdivision costs. It's very expensive. So we gave up on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anyone from Water Environmental Technologies to add to this? I see, I'm assuming you're Wendy? Oh, okay. Wendy was
Hey
nodding,
there.
Russell.
Yeah, I'm located online. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, do you guys have any more questions about anything going on or anything that I should speak to directly?
I don't. I just wanted you to have an opportunity to add anything if you had anything to add.
Sure. Yeah, we've been with these guys for a little while and we've been helping them out through this process. I think everything that we've covered so far covers everything that is needed. If we have any more questions, I would be happy to answer them. But yes, I am here if needed.
Okay, thank you. And Jeffrey, anything to add, or Wendy?
No?
Oh, here, come on up. You can share the mic with him.
Thank you, Commissioners. There is one correction to the record that we went through a quitclaim deed, and that was in September of 2025, so just recently, just to amend the record, and that was at your recommendation because of the fact that there could not be both of us on the original house deed into the quitclaim deed, so that's why we did that.
Is it misdated?
He just said 2024. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
So the other thing I'll just mention is that Jeff alluded to this, but we continue to have a farm. We have many farm animals, and so we have no intention of otherwise subdividing or getting rid of the land. We still need that land for all of our animals. Subdivision was just something we initially entertained, and then, as Jeff said, became very clear that it was way too expensive for us to go through. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we weren't we weren't anticipating that. So once we got deeper into the process, we realized that we weren't going to be able to do that. So this is the only way that we can understand to bring my parents here. They live out of state, but need to be closer to us, and have them close to us so that we can continue to care for them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that opportunity.
I don't have any questions.
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add? Okay.
In conclusion, staff recommends approval with the motion presented on the screen before you. Commissioners, here is your language.
Thank you, Kevin. I don't have anything to add. Do you have a motion? Thank you. Is there any further public comment on this? Okay. Thanks.
I would move to approve the request by Jeffrey E. Stevenson to utilize the family transfer exemption as presented in the exemption application and affidavit.
Second, any further discussion or public comment? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you. Okay, our third hearing is with Tim Worley, the Big Bear Addition subdivision amendments.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Tim Worley, Senior Planner with PDS. And I'm here to present Big Bear Addition Condition and Covenant Amendments. Which is a request from Phyllis and Dennis Sauter, represented by WGM Group, for a condition and covenant amendment. Big Bear Addition is a minor subdivision between Pulp Mill Road and Loisel Lane, south of the interstate and northwest of the Y. And this is a view of the plat with north to the left of the slide. There were 3 conditions of approval for this filed subdivision that dates back to 2003. Condition 3C was regarding fire protection, offering the options of either residential fire sprinklers or a 350 gallon per minute well. The condition applies to new structures or expansion of existing structures. There was a new manufactured home placed on the property in July of this year. The preference of the landowner is for a cistern rather than what's prescribed in Condition 3C, and this requires a condition and covenant amendment. So what's required is to amend condition language to include cisterns, and similarly to amend covenant language to include installation and maintenance of those cisterns, I should say. So amending conditions and covenants is authorized in subdivision regulations section 6.7. Certain criteria must be met. Essentially, it can only be a minor change that's fundamentally in keeping with the original subdivision approval, complying with the essence of the subdivision regulations as applies to the project. And it can't be based on factors such as cost. The bottom line is that these sorts of changes are minor changes that can't allow for the elimination of the basic requirement, which in this case is fire protection. And the new mitigation must be roughly equivalent to the original. So this is the manufactured home in question that was placed on the property in July of 2005 and is required to have fire protection. So WGM, in making this request, had alternate language for Condition 3C, which you can see on the slide here. And just to illustrate, this will result also in covenant language that will be amended, and I'm not going to go over the fine points, but it gets into maintenance of the cistern in addition to the changes that I've discussed. This went through agency review where the county fire inspector and Frenchtown Rural Fire both reviewed the project and support the change. So staff is in support of the condition and covenant amendment. And commissioners, there's your main motion.
Thank you. Is there anyone from WGM who'd like to speak to this?
Hello, I'm Caitlin Frisbee from WGM Group, and I just will offer my time for any questions or anything you guys need. Tim covered it. And yeah, Tim covered it, actually.
All the fire folks just walked out.
So is there a reason why we're dealing with this now after the home has already been put in place?
Yes, I will make a correction, and I don't know if I just misheard, but it was placed in July of 2025, not 2005. But basically, it was an oversight, and the client, once it was caught, then I think she spoke to Tim, and then came to WGM with her options. And she is under contract with a concrete casting company for a cistern tank to be installed in the spring.
And can you explain what a dry hydrant is?
Yeah, so that is just it's just a standalone kind of pump out of the ground that then connects to the cistern or the cistern tank. It is what's called a static system, so no electricity or anything, but that's why the maintenance is included in that covenant language as well, for how full it needs to be and how to protect it from getting clogged.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
it will not be dry if there's a fire. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? I finally remembered. I'm not seeing any in the room. Online? Okay.
Okay, in the spirit of better late than never, I move to approve the Big Bear Addition Condition Amendment / Covenant Amendment request as detailed in the staff analysis and subject to the amended condition of approval.
Second, any further discussion or public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
I was thinking we were almost done, but I see Matt Heimel's here. Other business, we got a floodplain map update.
We're just going to get situated here.
Okay. You can, anywhere, wherever you can find a seat in a, yeah.
Well, good afternoon. I am Matt Heimel, a planner and the floodplain administrator with Missoula County Planning Development and Sustainability. This item on our agenda under other business is the floodplain map update consultation coordination officers meeting. So we are in the process of a major floodplain mapping update with FEMA, also being assisted with the DNRC, for the Clark Fork River, Bitterroot River, and Rock Creek. The Federal Emergency Management Agency published preliminary maps and a preliminary study on August 28th. And this meeting, Consultation Coordination Officer, CCO for short, is one of the major milestones in the process where the community is presented with this information. We have a discussion and we can have some questions answered. Usually this is like a workshop meeting. We have it on our public meeting agenda today because as a regularly scheduled meeting, it's the most accessible and transparent format that we could have. It's a little unusual today also because the federal government being what it is, we don't have FEMA staff here today with us, but we do have some amazing staff from the DNRC to help us with information. So I'll be accompanied by Nadine Wadsworth, Flood Hazard Outreach Planner, Douglas Bruger, Floodplain Dam Safety Bureau Chief, Tracy Sears, the Montana National Flood Insurance Program Coordinator, Maura Davin, Public Information Officer. We have Sarah Smolka-Joyce, Flood Hazard GIS Specialist, and we also have Larry Schock, Civil Engineering Specialist online. So we have a presentation today. Nadine will take over much of the presentation, but I'm also on hand to answer specific questions and talk about some areas of concern for our community.
Thank you. Okay, Nadine.
Perfect. If I could share my, thank you, Matt. Could I be able to share my screen?
the Teams meeting?
I am.
Okay, so just open the Teams and then.
Oh, I am able to share. Perfect. All right, let me get this up because technology. Okay. All righty. Do it. There we go. We got it. Well, thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Matt, for letting us come and talk to you today. We're here to officially kick off your preliminary flood insurance rate maps. So Matt asked me to put together a neat little agenda, and I know it's an agenda within your agenda, but I thought it would be worth pointing out. So really, before we kind of dig into the preliminary flood insurance rate maps, I wanted to just kind of set the stage, talk about what brought us all together today, some of the history of the county's floodplain maps, and the next steps in the project. So what is the purpose of floodplain mapping? Floodplain maps help identify flood risk. And by identifying that flood risk, we can help people stay out of harm's way. Floodplain mapping projects are a coordinated effort with the city, county, state, and FEMA. And we really coordinate these efforts to help identify and eventually reduce those risks. We don't map any old flood event. What goes on these floodplain maps is what's called the 1% annual chance flood event, or you've probably heard it as the 100-year flood event. Don't think of it in terms of years. Think of it as a flood event that has a 1% chance of occurring in any given year. Now, as much as I'd like to think that these maps are going to show every single flood event exactly this way, there could be some circumstances where maybe there's some debris in the channel or blocked culverts that could make the water behave a little bit differently. But by and large, these maps should be able to show you what that 1% annual chance flood risk is. Floodplain maps today are called flood insurance rate maps, or FIRMs. If I say an acronym, absolutely stop me and say, what is that? But they're used for lots of different reasons. So because the county regulates these map floodplains with their county floodplain regulations, federally backed flood insurance is available to all the residents countywide. They're also used by your planners to help guide growth and development. Adrian uses these for emergency management to understand what roads could possibly be overtopped during that flood event. The county sanitarian uses them to ensure that septic systems are placed outside of those flood risk areas. Mortgage companies use maps to determine if a home they're willing to finance could be at risk of being flooded. And these maps are used to help set flood insurance premiums. So recognizing that all these entities use these maps should be up to date, current, and accurately reflect the flood risk. So let's just go back in time a little, and we're going to talk about the history of the floodplain maps in Missoula County. The first actual floodplain map was issued in 1974, and it was just mostly to the city. It wasn't issued with a study, and they just used what best data they had available at that time to really show what the flood risk could potentially be. The actual first flood study that was for the areas that we studied, which is the Clark Fork, Bitterroot, and Rock Creek, didn't actually happen until 1983. And that's what the status of your maps currently are. So back in 2015, Missoula County was a part of what was called map modernization. It was an effort to try to get the counties that were fast growing some more better up-to-date data. And they pretty much just took your 1983 and 1985 studies on the Clark Fork, Bitterroot, and Rock Creek and just digitized them without a new study. So the county has been trying to regulate two maps that are almost as old as me. But that's really what prompted this new study. So for many years before we started this project back in 2019, there had been requests to get some actual flood study work done on these systems. But we really didn't have the opportunity until we actually got this project started. So in 2019, we coordinated with the county and the city. We got some letters of support for the project, and we, the state, applied for grants from FEMA to conduct the study. One of the things in the letters of support was that the county was actually going to offer some in-kind services similar to the Clearwater study that we did, where they were going to get some of the survey work. We didn't actually need to use those services because the grant that we got was large enough to cover the whole flood study, which was really great. This flood study actually updated 93 stream miles through the entire county. And I want to point out it was a collaborative effort with also Granite County. So we did, originally we had started with Mineral, then we moved down to Missoula and Granite. Granite's quite a bit of ways ahead of Missoula. Their maps actually went effective just this past year, so. I don't know how familiar everybody is with flood zones, but I kind of want to set the stage before we start looking at some of the preliminary flood insurance rate maps. So I just had, okay. What we're looking at is what is depicted on your flood insurance rate maps. The special flood hazard area is that blue area where you see the flood fringe with that area in the middle with the red hatching. Now that special flood hazard area, 100-year floodplain, 1% annual chance floodplain, however you want to say it, is the area that the county's regulations are subject to, where there are permits required. If somebody has a federally backed mortgage, their lender will require them to carry flood insurance. Now that red hatching area in the middle, that's what we call the floodway. That has different stricter regulations at the county and at the state levels for development. In the state of Montana, because that's typically where we see the deepest and fastest moving water during this high flood event, there is no new development in a floodway. Now that brown area on the outside, that would take a much larger flood event called a 0.2% or 500-year flood event. And then anywhere outside of that, we just call it low risk area, but low risk doesn't mean no risk. All right, so we're gonna kind of keep going with setting the stage. So we were here many years ago, I want to say 22, rolling out what we call draft data. What is draft data? Those were just the initial results from the flood study that we conducted. It was really before the in-depth review that was conducted by FEMA and their contractor. But we like to share those results early, get that into the community's hands so that they can start looking at the results. And that's what the public open house meetings that we held here in that October were based on. FEMA actually issues the preliminary maps. We don't issue the preliminary maps at the state level. We just help coordinate the rollout of the maps with our communities. Now, there have been changes from draft to prelim. It happens often, especially for larger studies like this, and it's because the study has to meet FEMA standards and guidance, and that's when they really do their in-depth review. All those changes were captured in this technical memorandum, and we did share that with the county for their review when the maps went preliminary. So here's some of the components of your preliminary issuance for the county. This is 3 of 5 index maps. The other 2 index maps aren't on here because they're not affected by this new study. What I want to point out is the index maps are a really nice reference way to figure out what map panel number you need to look up in order to see what the flood risk for your area is. And only those areas in red are affected by this preliminary study. So that's why you see some of the panels are still in black, except for there wasn't enough room for how many panels. So that middle one shows all the numbers down below. Those are also additional prelim panels. Now, these preliminary flood insurance rate maps and the flood insurance study, what do they represent? They represent the 1% annual chance floodplain, the floodway, the 0.2% annual chance floodplain, all the flood elevations, and only these preliminary flood insurance rate maps are the basis for the upcoming 90-day appeal and comment period. So someone living on the Blackfoot or up on the Clearwater would not be able to submit an appeal as part of the formal 90-day appeal period. Here's some of the other things that came with the prelim issuance. So volume 1 of 4 for your flood insurance study. The flood insurance study really takes the study data and condenses it. It outlines all the important components. One of the things that's kind of unfortunate is in the new format, we did lose the big section for the flood history. So besides the fact that Tracy will tell you you should keep your old FISs, you should keep your old FISs just so you can keep that flood history. The flood history section is really small and condensed, which is unfortunate because they really did a good job for a while to capture all the historic flood events in the jurisdictions. But it also includes all your flood profiles. So it's a section view of the stream, and it helps you determine the flood elevations for the area. Makes Matt's life a lot easier. And then the floodway data tables. Along with this, FEMA also takes an initial look at what are called letter of map amendments. So what is a letter of map amendment? Because I'm trying not to use acronyms. They're also called LOMAs. So due to map scale, sometimes property owners are actually higher than what is shown on the floodplain map. And instead of having Swiss cheese on a map, a property owner could determine if their home is actually higher through elevation and submit that to FEMA. If FEMA agrees, then FEMA sends a determination back to the property owner saying yes or no. Now, a letter of map amendment is only for flood insurance purposes. So if FEMA agrees, the property owner could then submit that to their lender and say, look, I'm higher, and they may allow them not to have flood insurance. But a LOMA does not exempt them from getting a floodplain permit for any work that they do on their home, home or property, they still have to come talk with Matt about a permit. But what FEMA does is they review all of the LOMAs in the study area, and they make a determination whether those LOMAs will still be valid or no longer valid because of the study. So it's a pretty decent sized document that was given to the county and the city, is available. Matt has it. And if anybody wanted to see what their determination for their map amendment was, they could bug Matt and ask him. So let's talk about some of the changes. Commissioners, I know with the draft data, you remember this kind of broken up by the streams. So we had the Clark Fork, Bitterroot, and Rock Creek. Because this is all combined now, these are the changes from the last firm or flood insurance rate map. So it compares that 1980s study data with the new study data. And the colors correlate to the state flood hazard viewer, which we'll be looking at here in just a few minutes. But what this is showing is acres, structures over 400 square feet, and then structures under 400 square feet. It's broken up by floodway and floodplain. And what it's showing you is how many are being added because of the new study, how many are proposed to be removed with the new study, and how many are unchanged. So they are currently in, and they're proposed to stay in the floodplain. What's coming up next? 6 to 9 months now, roughly, FEMA will open a formal appeal period. FEMA does all the most of the legwork for this to get it prepped. They have very strict guidance. They must post it in the Federal Register. It also has to correlate with press releases, which they'll run for you. They generally run a press release 2 weeks before the appeal period start date, and then the second press release must run on the appeal start date. The only things that we need help with from Matt is he's kind of the pass-through. So it has to follow whatever your public comment process is. So however the county accepts public comments, I do have tools to make it easier for Matt, tracking sheets, nice infographics to really help people understand what the difference between a comment and an appeal is, and what's required for an appeal to be considered an appeal. We do post all the information also on the project website that I maintain. I know the county has one as well. Some of the things to know about the formal appeal period: Matt does not review any submittals that come in. I don't review any submittals come in. The submittals are only reviewed and considered by FEMA. So they are the ones that make the final determination for that. And then for an appeal, in order for an appeal to be valid, it's not just that an area could be mapped differently. It actually has to prove that there's a scientific or mathematical error in the study, and they have to be able to provide the revised component of the study. So by this point in the study, we started it in 2019, it has undergone rigorous quality assurance and quality checks, not just during the study at our level, but also at the federal level by FEMA and their contractors. So it's really more about catching errors as opposed to study or mapping something differently. And so before we get into some of the other stuff, I'm going to hand it over to Tracy. She's going to talk about the National Flood Insurance Program and really why this study and these maps are important.
Great. Well, thank you, Nadine, and good afternoon, commissioners and county staff and participants. As Nadine mentioned, my name is Tracy Sears, and I'm out of the DNRC Helena office. I'm the National Flood Insurance Program Coordinator for the state of Montana. And I'm just going to go over just some general information of the National Flood Insurance Program, which is also referred to as the NFIP. The NFIP is really a unified floodplain management program that is offered by the federal government. It's made up of 4 parts. It's made up of mapping, regulations, insurance, and mitigation. And I know today's really focusing on mapping, but all these parts kind of work together. But the main premise of this program, the intention of this program from the start is actually to reduce flood losses and damages by reducing flood risk and kind of knowing what that risk is and means on how to reduce it, whether it's through development or mitigation, is hopefully going to make the community safer kind of moving forward. The National Flood Insurance Program, for a community to really want to join the program, they actually have to enter into an agreement with the federal government. So it is a mutual agreement between the community and the federal government. And participating communities, they have a few responsibilities when they join the program, and one of them is to adopt and enforce regulations that meet or exceed the state and federal standards. They're also required to maintain these maps, so that could be through processing some of these letter of map changes that Nadine mentioned. It's also through some of these mapping updates that are occurring as well, and these happen continuously throughout local communities. In exchange, FEMA provides not only flood insurance throughout the entire community to be available, but also they provide disaster assistance if there were to be an event. And so for flood insurance, I know Nadine mentioned this previously, but when you're looking at areas that have been designated in the community as high risk, within that high-risk area, flood insurance is mandatory for anybody who takes out a federally backed loan for their structures. Now, it's not mandatory in some of those lower risk zones. We always recommend it because we see flooding events that do go outside some of those high-risk areas. But lenders can always require flood insurance in any zone. Flood insurance is a huge tool. When we see disasters, it's the last thing we want to see in a community, but we do work with property owners throughout the state. They do fare better if they have flood insurance. It's almost like a way to kind of protect their structure as well, to kind of help them. It's not going to make them whole, but hopefully help them if they were to be faced with a disaster, especially for flooding. Now, a few years ago, the flood insurance program changed to an actuarial rating. And what that means is as Nadine mentioned, they use the maps to look at if a property is in or out of that high-risk area, but they're also using those maps as one of the factors they use for rating. There's other things that kind of go into it. They look at how far a structure is from a stream, the history of flooding for that structure, but I do know FEMA has a great rate explanation guide that kind of goes over some of that, but it has changed on how floodplain management and flood insurance actually interacts with this new rating system that they have. One of the big things I wanted to highlight was that Missoula actually participates in what they call the community rating system, which is excellent because it shows that the community is going above and beyond the minimum federal standards. And because of that, it's the community rating system is the only break that property owners have when it comes to flood insurance. So depending on how the community is classified under the CRS program, it provides insurance discounts on premiums for property owners. And right now, you guys are at a class 7. So that's providing over 15% of a discount on a premium ratings for property owners. And that's great. It's the only discount that's available. Other things that can lower flood insurance rates and lower flood insurance risk is if people are building higher, if they are actually following the regulations, they get a lot of a break when it comes to flood insurance. There's also private flood insurance that's also available. I would direct anyone, if you're curious about insurance, to go to the Montana Insurance Commissioner's website. They have a lot of information about that. Then we get into what if a community decides not to administer the program, or in these situations where new maps are kind of going through, if they decide not to adopt these new maps, what happens? If a community is no longer participating in the program or they decide not to adopt these maps, they actually could be subject to being sanctioned. And the maps are the only ones that, if they don't adopt the maps, they automatically, unfortunately, the entire community gets sanctioned. When that happens, Flood insurance is no longer available within the community. Disaster assistance is extremely limited, if available at all. And then it becomes this process of the community. What we see is a lot of communities try to get back into the program within the next couple of years. And so it's going to be a huge process, but there is limitations when the community unfortunately gets sanctioned if they're not from the NFIP program, if they decide not to adopt the maps before their effective dates.
Thanks, Tracy. So kind of looking ahead, here is an updated timeline. We're at the preliminary maps issuance. They were issued on August 28th. Now, kind of looking ahead, and what we've seen historically is what this timeline is kind of based on. Like I mentioned, 6 to 9 months from now, we should see the appeal period open up. We'll work with Matt to get everything ready for that. If a submittal comes in that changes the maps and it's a valid appeal, there will be revised preliminary that will be issued. It could delay the project, but barring any of that, if everything goes the way that it typically goes, these maps could be ready to go effective by mid to late 2027. So 6 months before the maps go effective, FEMA issues what's called a letter of final determination, saying, hey, we've reviewed everything, we've run our formal due process, these are what the maps are. You, the county, have 6 months to formally adopt the maps and update your regulations. So it's not like all of a sudden tomorrow the maps would go effective and the county wouldn't have time to get the regulations in order. And we help Matt get all that squared away through the process. So like I mentioned, we do have a project website at the state level that I maintain where we post all the outreach materials, meetings, background of the project. And then this is the way to access our state flood hazard viewer, which I'm really proud of, especially because our GIS is here. She works really hard on this for us. So I did want to kind of walk you through this, and then that's really all I had, other than some questions. But this is really neat. So property owner can come up here. They can either put in their address if they wanted to in that search bar, or they can just click the Missoula Granite button. Like I said, Granite County was a part of this project, but they're a little bit further ahead. But it'll always open up on the preliminary mapping. I know it says draft mapping on the tab, but this is for all the projects we have statewide. So we've just kind of left it as draft mapping, but it does show the preliminary flood study results. At these bottom tabs, you can also toggle over to, well, I'm curious, I want to know what the effective maps look like. So the effective mapping is also loaded on the viewer. I'm a visual person, and if you remember that table that I showed earlier with the floodplain changes, it correlates to the next 2 tabs. So through the study, kind of the comparison between the effective and the preliminary, anywhere you see that blue, like I mentioned, they are already mapped in and they're proposed to stay in. Anywhere you see the red is going to be newly added, and anywhere you see that green is proposed to be removed from the floodplain. And it's broken down even further with the floodway. So if you just wanted to see what the changes were, what the floodway from the effective maps to the preliminary maps, it's broken down this way. Matt really wanted me to kind of highlight this next tab a little bit, so I'm going to go over here. All right. So when we collected LiDAR back in 2019, One of the things that they do is they also collect the ground elevation surrounding a home. So if somebody was curious, thinking that maybe they were higher, like we talked about for a map amendment, they could click on their home and it'll tell you what that leg, lowest adjacent grade, or that ground elevation around their structure is. And if they zoom in, which this might not have been the best one. Oh, there's a flood elevation. They can compare it to the closest flood elevation, which in this case, the one I picked was 3,290, and it's significantly higher to the closest flood elevation. It unfortunately can't be used to submit that map amendment, not yet, but it does give somebody an idea if it's worth spending the money to hire a surveyor to come in and help them determine some elevation. So it's a neat tab. And then the next tab over is flood depths. This will come in super handy for emergency management planning. It really shows how deep the water is expected to get during that 1% annual chance or 100-year flood event. And I know that there's a historic button tab, and I apologize, we do not have historic flooding area for Missoula County yet. This is for a different county. We are working on it, but that's not for Missoula County yet. But with that, that's all we really had today. And so yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any communities in Montana that have opted out, if you will, and not allowed their citizens a 15% discount?
We actually, Missoula is actually one of 11 communities that participate in the community rating system. All of our communities can qualify for it because we have higher state standards, but only 11 actually take that time to commit to it because it's a huge savings.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, then I have another question. Matt, I feel like a couple weeks ago we had some citizens come to us who, and now I'm confused. When we said that kind of all entities use these maps, like the health department, OEM, or Office of Emergency Management, planning department, they all use these draft maps now at the same time, or it seems like from that meeting there was like the health department, environmental, seemed to be setting its regulations of like into the future, or the future maps are going to say X, and so that's how the health department was determining it. But then the planning department or the insurance companies are using the maps differently. Can you help me out in my word salad?
Correct. Yeah, it's a little confusing. That's for sure. So, right at this time, environmental health, the health department are using these preliminary maps as available data for regulatory use. County Floodplain Administration and using it for and reviewing for floodplain development permits is based on the effective older maps that we have now. So for floodplain permitting in the planning department, we're not using the preliminary map data. We look at it for every development that comes in, and I will almost on a daily basis provide cautionary advice to people. However, we're still using the effective flood insurance rate maps that were last published for the Clark Fork, Bitterroot Rock Creek, July of 2015. Now, the county may adopt regulations that reference preliminary maps for regulatory use before they're effective at the federal level for insurance purposes. However, that's not on the table at this time. So that would take place in the future for consideration at a public meeting with public notice beforehand.
Okay, so only the health department is using it, the latest, greatest.
Correct.
That can be frustrating for folks to have two different timelines to work with if you're trying to develop a project now in 2025. And we're not going to know what's going on until 2027. Okay, thank you. Yes.
So Nadine, this might be a question for you or Tracy. Have you ever seen an instance of a successful appeal? Because clearly there's a differentiation between an appeal and someone commenting. And I think this is an important distinction because we not infrequently get folks coming before us concerned that, hey, I've never seen any water anywhere near my home, but clearly you need to do a little more work to make that case. But have you ever seen an instance where someone actually was successful in challenging the data?
Yes. It was in Gallatin County. It was during the West Gallatin Bozeman Creek flood study update. And the data that they had to submit was quite a lot. It required a lot of coordination with FEMA and their contractors, and it did end up resulting in a change to some panels. But it was not an easy task, and it was a business that was able to expend those funds. So you're right, Commissioner, a comment is more, I don't like these maps, or it's never flooded here, or this is the name of a road and you have the road incorrectly labeled. The county actually provided comments similar to that when the preliminary maps were issued that will be addressed by FEMA. But an appeal is, like I mentioned, not just that the mapping could have been done differently, but that the mapping that is shown and the study data is incorrect, and you have to be able to prove why it's incorrect.
So would it be safe to say that if someone sees their property or a portion of their property within the floodplain in the preliminary maps and wants to challenge that, they should probably expect that unless they themselves are an engineer or a surveyor, that they're going to need to hire some expert outside assistance to help make that case?
To submit a formal appeal, I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. Just want to temper folks' expectations that simply disputing with a comment probably will not result in the desired outcome. Another question, I guess. So you mentioned our good friends Granite County. Holy smokes, Granite County got ahead of us, Juanita.
Twice. They mentioned it twice.
So is there a process going on with Ravalli and Mineral County simultaneously?
So Mineral County actually was ahead of you. So we
two
studied.
counties. What the heck?
You get better results when you study the system as a whole. So we did. We started with Mineral County. Their maps went effective in 2021, 2022. So we had already started working on Missoula County and Granite County. We actually have Powell County loaded up too. So Powell County is actually going through a study, but Ravalli County is not on our study list right now. And we are not currently restudying Ravalli County.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas, do you have anything to add?
I did have a thought about your question about appeals and the amount of data. We're happy to be available for folks if they come to you with questions. We've done several cases where we will give some feedback on what paths forward could look like. Because obviously, like you mentioned, people need to be surveyors, engineers to really dive into the data. And we are the ones who produce these maps with our contractors primarily. So we have the data available. We've been giving it to Matt and are happy for Matt to provide the data too, but we're a backup source for that information. And yeah, we can give a 10,000 foot view of what sort of requirements there would be for an appeal and help people make an informed decision if they want to if they want to pursue that, if they're willing to hear us out. So don't be shy to send folks our way as well. We're as busy as anybody else, but we can try to give people at least a preliminary cut of what types of appeals may end up being valid or not. And all the other nuances, say they have an issue with the Blackfoot River that's coming in there. That wasn't part of our study. It's part of the new panel now. And so we can help have those conversations as well and connect folks with FEMA contacts and otherwise be there to assist as best we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting about the folks online. Maura, Sarah, Larry. Or anyone online? Okay.
Hi, Radley Watkins, Executive Director of the Missoula Conservation District, and we oversee the Montana Natural Streambed and Land Preservation Act for Missoula Conservation District, which is just about the boundaries of the county. And I just really appreciate the partnership from Floodplain. I work closely with Matt. Probably Floodplain and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks are our two closest partners. I get to see Matt in action all the time, and he's ultra professional and has a really hard job because he can't waver in order to get these discounts for all the people in the county. It doesn't always make him very popular. And I feel for him that way. But it's so important. And I also want to thank the commissioners and DNRC for having the avenue and for the county participating in those extra steps, like the floodway, riparian buffer. I think it's so important. We have channel migration zone maps for the Bitterroot and the Clark Fork through Missoula County. And I get the question sometimes after even not a registered 100-year flood, but just a high water event and where someone loses some land and they say, well, where's it going to stop? And I always say, are you talking 500 years, 5,000 years, 5 million years? Like, look at that mountainside, look at that mountainside. It's been back and forth. And a lot of us in stream management are trying to teach people that we can't just look at the river or the stream. We have to look at the stream corridor and remember that this is sort of a living entity that's going to be moving back and forth. So as you guys go through this unpopular process of telling people that their house is now in the floodplain based on better data and climate models and things, I just want to tell you that it's really appreciated by your partners out there, and it really helps serve the people of Missoula County. So thanks.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Rad. Okay, Griffin. Okay.
Well, I just want to say thank you for DNRC sharing almost all of its staff, apparently, to join us today. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you all.
It was our pleasure. Thank you, commissioners, for having us come today.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned. Have a great afternoon, everyone.